Welcome back. Since we have created our Pear Deck lesson and inserted our questions in the last video, we are now going to see how we can present that lesson and how students will interact with it. Quickly, before we get to that, I do want to mention if you were admiring my nice slide designs here, this is not an ad. I promise I'm not getting paid for this. It's just a tool that I found that's useful. It's called slidesgo.com. And it has a whole bunch of templates that you can use, especially ones for education. They're pushing that real hard right now. If you find one there, it's very easy to use as a Google Slides theme. It just pulls it up. You can make a copy and use the slides or use the theme itself. They look great, and it breaks students out of kind of the ordinary themes that come in Google Slides. So now that we've done that, we can start our Pear Deck lesson. Remember, we have already put questions in. We already have these bars at the bottom of each of our slides that are going to give our students options on those slides. To start, I'm going to press Start Lesson on the Pear Deck add-on, and I get two options here. Student-paced activity is when you design a set of slides that students can do at their own speed. This is great if you make content that's, dare I say, like a worksheet or a workbook that they can move through and do tasks in their own time and not have to wait on other students. They can do it independently and you'll be able to see their work. Instructor-paced activity is what I'm going to use today. This is a little more traditional presentation, and it allows you to control the pace of this presentation. Students will be locked to the slide that you are viewing, and you'll be able to see their interactions, but control where they are in the presentation. I'm going to choose this one. It's going to open a new window in the Slides launcher. Notice this is all through Pear Deck, so instead of presenting normally as we would through Google Slides, we're going to present here. It does take a minute to load, especially with all the things our computers are doing these days. So I would highly advise pulling it up before class. What you'll notice is that after you do a few of these, if you have this screen up when your students come in, they'll know what to do and they'll get right to it. They'll go to joinpd.com, they'll type in that code, and they'll be ready to go. If you want something a little bit easier, maybe for younger students, you can also click Give Students a Link at the bottom. You can send this to them however you like. Google Classroom, maybe Panther Portal, and it'll give them a direct link to the presentation itself. I'm going to use that link to get straight to my presentation. Notice we'd left the option on for students to sign in. They can do this using their school email address. As long as they type it right. We want them to use their school email address here because there isn't actually an account. What it's doing is it is using just their name from their Google account, really, to identify them in your class so that you can know who's giving responses when they respond. When they join, they'll get this question about how they're feeling. They're allowed to skip it, but you'll find a lot of them do answer. And it's really nice to just know how your students are doing at the beginning of class. If you get a bunch of sad faces, you might have to address that before moving on with your lesson. You can see once the students get in, they can still interact with different parts of their device, but if they are on their iPad or their computer, they will not be able to do anything besides make this a little bit bigger to see it full screen. They have no other options, no controls here. That is all back with us as the teacher. So a few things on this box before we leave it. At the bottom left of this box, we can see how many students have connected. This is great because you know when to start. The other thing that you can see down here is Open Teacher Dashboard. I'm going to pause here to talk about that teacher dashboard. It's going to do a very similar task to the one that we are going to show here on the screen in a second. I will pull up the teacher dashboard to show you how it looks from time to time. The main difference is that on the teacher dashboard, it is meant for students not to see. So if you were presenting this presentation, you do not want to do it using the teacher dashboard if students are watching your screen, if you're sharing your screen on Zoom, for instance. However, if they are only viewing it on their end, then you can pull up the teacher dashboard. It gives a few more controls and it identifies students that are giving responses as opposed to leaving them all anonymous. So what I have pulled up right now might be on like a projector. If you open up the teacher dashboard. You can also do this from a second device if you navigate there and sign in with your Google account. And it will give you a few more extra features and abilities while you're giving the presentation. All right. So if we've pulled this up, it'll allow us to click here to close the join code that's on there. If we're on this version, we can just simply click off of it. I'm going to remove the teacher dashboard for a minute just to show you what it looks like on here, and I'll bring that teacher dashboard in a little bit. So you can see here that we have control over our slides and we can add some content using the new prompt button that's behind me. We can also end the presentation, or we have a few more options under this three-dot hamburger menu. If you do want to open that dashboard, you can open it in a new window or a new device. You can make it full screen, or you can turn on and switch to student paced if you want to in the middle of your presentation. So we are going to go ahead and move to our first question. This one, we said students were allowed to write a response. You'll notice it does show that at the bottom. That bar is still there. We can't really see it on our screen. Let's see what it looks like on students' screens. They get the slide to the left, and they get a spot to answer in text on the right. What's another type of triangle? Scaling. They can type their response here, and if they'd like to, they could keep typing in this box, whether on and on or on new lines. You'll see they also have the option to add another response. So if you want them to add multiple, or if they want to, they can. They're allowed to put whatever they want here, and they can type in any answer. Let's see, there's one more type. What are we forgetting? Can you think of what it is? It's isosceles. I knew you all knew that. I was just messing with you. As they type it, notice I'm not going to hit enter yet. I'm not going to hit add another response. If I flip back to what the teacher can see, you'll notice that my slide hasn't changed at all, but I can see there's one response in. If I click show responses, now keep in mind, if I'm sharing my screen on Zoom or putting this on a projector, this will show on my projector. Notice both responses are in, even the ones that students haven't hit enter on yet. You can view them one at a time as a list or in a grid. It'll make them a little smaller. You'll see some other options come in a second. Notice it's not putting names on them because, again, this is more of a screen that we would be sharing with students in the front of a class. I will pull in the teacher dashboard window for a second, and you'll see that here we do see names attached to the responses. So we can see who gave each one, we can star them, we can also write things back to them if we want to write back to them, tell them that their answer is inappropriate or that they did a great job. You can also advance this through the teacher dashboard. So for the rest of this, I am going to use the teacher dashboard because it will provide us a lot more useful tools. So we were just on this slide. I have them a little bigger over to the left so I can see what we're doing over here. And you'll see the teacher dashboard really does focus on the responses. The slides aren't nearly as big, but I can see that we moved to the multiple choice slide. Let me move to the student view on that one. And you'll see here is where we inserted our multiple choice question. Notice the responses are what we typed into the dialogue and do not necessarily need to match what we added to the slide. For those of you who want to know, this is the unit circle. So I'll go back here and I can see that my students responded accordingly. If you'd like to, again, in this window, you are viewing the responses. If you click show responses, it'll put a red box around here to show that you are showing those now to your students. If I go back to what the students are seeing, they would be seeing this screen, on the projector. So again, if you're still sharing that screen on a projector somewhere, it's doing that in that presentation window. Notice that there did not change anything for what the student is seeing on their screen. Going back to the teacher dashboard. we're still progressing through our presentation. This is the slide that asked students for a number. Again, works very similar to text. They can type in whatever number they want. If they want to go up by a few, they can, or they can type in, we know that that's going to be 3. Again, we can see those responses roll in. You can view these in a variety of ways. Again, you can view them all on a number line, or you can view them as a grid just as the numbers themselves. On slide number 5, we had our website that we were asking students to navigate to. So notice on the teacher dashboard, it pulls up that slide. On the students page, on the students view, we get that slide to the left, but notice it pulls that website up right next to it. They don't have to go out of the browser. They don't have to go to another tab. It's all kept within the presentation, so they can still see what you're doing as you're going. Once we move to the next slide, this was a drawing slide, and I noticed it's waiting for responses again. And on this slide, students get lots of drawing tools. This is still why it's one of my more favorite tools, because this gives students the freedom to write and draw whatever they like. They can start here, writing in a really thick pen. We can change the size. If they have a stylus for their device too, they can also write with that, and it works really well both on iPads and other devices with styluses. So this is, again, such a versatile tool. You can use them to have them solve equations like I'm doing here. You can have them circle things, draw pictures, point to things, highlight things, write text on the slide, however you want them to interact with it. You will notice when I go back to the teacher view that we can see these a couple different ways. This is a full screen slide. If I had multiple students, they'd show up below. Viewing them as a grid is easiest to see all of your students at once. There's also a really fun view that's called overlaid layout, where if you have multiple responses, it'll show them all on top of each other. It's really great for showing like a heat map of responses. If you're asking an opinion question and asking them to circle something or point something out, it'll put everything on top of each other here, and it's really fun to look at sometimes. On to our final slide. This one was the one where we allowed students to drag some different icons to the different places. You'll notice on our teacher dashboard, there are no responses, and on the screen that we would be sharing with the class, again, nothing's showing up here unless we click the Show Responses button. On the students' end, they now have these 3 pieces on their slide that they can click and drag to wherever they want. So they can put them next to the content, they can put them right on the content, wherever they like. Okay. It'll show that they've finished the slide. Again, on the screen that we're presenting, nothing's going to show up unless we say to, but on our teacher dashboard, we'll again get to see what students have responded. Again, you can overlay all their responses, put them on a grid, or make a list of individual responses. Finally, while you are doing this with your students, if you decide that you would like to stop them or slow them down or get them to get their answers in a little quicker, you can use the lock screen option down here. If you click it, when you do, students will see that the slide has been locked and they will not be able to edit their information anymore. They'll have to stay here and they can't edit their answers. Also, instead of locking immediately, if you click and hold, you can pick a time option. And this is great. I love this. I can give my students 30 seconds to finish what they're doing. And on their screen, they'll see that 30-second timer. So they can keep moving stuff around until that timer hits the bottom, and then it'll lock the slide just as we did before. There are so many ways that you can use all of these tools inside Pear Deck to make a really interactive class. Come back and watch this video as many times as you need to feel comfortable with these different tools. And if you would like, please reach out to me and ask any questions that you have. I'd love to come help you set up or use any of this in your classroom. Thank you, and I will see you in the next.